live from Surprise in Arizona. Hope you're having a super fantastic, sparkling day. Welcome to Before the Dirt Nap podcast number 1988. And tonight we're talking about crafting legacies, genealogy as art. Now, there's something different that you probably didn't think about. So I'm going to dive into this and have a little look. And I just realized I forgot to take Brad's hoodie off. So, but I like it. I love his hoodies. They're so big and baggy. They're almost a mini dress on me. But anyway, we're not here to talk about my sweatshirt. We're here to talk about crafting legacies, and how, what is it? Crafting legacies, genealogy as art. So there's all sorts of different ways that you can create art to be visual, to bring your, sorry, let's rewind and restart. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah, she didn't like that either. But there are ways that you can visually bring your family tree and your family history to life through something as simple as art. Now, back in the day before they had cameras, they used to get portraits taken. There were portraits that were drawn in pastels. There were ones that were oil painted, big elaborate ones, small ones. There were the little ones that were about yay big, little ovals that were done with just likenesses. They called them likenesses. Yes. So they had different ways of capturing people's images, and it was more, not so much the working class, unless they had an artist in the family. But, so these portraits are around and things like that. There's also different things that have been made at different points in time that may have been passed down through the generations to bring you to, some of the things that you've been passed down through your family heirlooms. So let's talk about some of these beautiful art pieces and everything else. Family tree design. You can make your family tree visually striking. You can do watercolor paintings, digital prints, or embroidery. I have actually seen an embroidered family tree. It was amazing. We back in 2004, my mum and dad were over from New Zealand, and we did this big trip. We went from where we were in Northern Virginia. We went into Pennsylvania. We stopped off at Gettysburg, which was absolutely fascinating. And if you're a genealogist, even better. So much stuff and information there that can help you in your genealogy research when you're learning about people in your family tree that fought in the Civil War. There's a lot of great information there. And even just learning about how they lived and things like that too was just mind-blowing. The difference between the Confederates and the Union as to how the different camps were set up and things like that. It was just amazing. But anyway, we continued our journey around to York, where the Harley-Davidson factory was, and we went in there and had a break. My dad liked motorcycles, and I found it on the map. I didn't even know it was there, and I happened to look on the map and found it there, so I showed it to my mum, and so I told Brad which exit to take, and he said, where are we going? I said, you'll see. And of course, I had this big sign that says Harley-Davidson, and Dad kind of figured it out at that point. So, but we had a really cool tour through the factory. And then where do we go? Oh, then we continued around. We were actually, and this is one day, we traveled all this way around. It was sort of like taking this loop around. And we ended up in a place called Blue Ball. Blue Ball? Yeah, Blue Ball. And we were booked in at a B&B for a couple of nights there. I think it might have been 3 nights. But we had this this kind of suite, and we went up the stairs, and there was like a little kitchenette area, a little living room area, a little bathroom, a very little bathroom. My husband was 6'5". He barely fitted in the shower. It was it was tiny. Thank goodness it had a curtain on it and not a glass enclosure, because there's no way he would have got the door closed. But then they also had 2 bedrooms. One had a king size bed in it, and the other one had 2 queens and I think a pull-out couch as well. But the whole suite area slept like about 8 people. But anyway, while we were there, one of the things that we arranged through the bed and breakfast is that they arranged for you to have dinner with an Amish family. And so the bed and breakfast guy got in his car and drove us out to this Amish family place. And I have to give credit to my husband. I have absolutely no idea how he managed to get us back to the bed and breakfast that night. He just, because when we left, it was dark. And so he follows the car. He's following brake lights in front of us. He knew where he had to turn and followed the guy to this farm. We get to this Amish farm, and the bed and breakfast guy, he gets out, goes and lets the family know that we're there and introduces us to the family. And then he leaves, and Brad has to get us back to the B&B, and half the time we're there. I mean, it was really fascinating visiting with him and learning a completely new culture. And I was like, how the heck are we going to get back? But Brad figured it out. I think him and Dad might have like chatted backwards and forwards a little bit, but Mum and I are in the back of the van and we're sort of like, do you know where we're going? And she's like, nope. And she goes, do you? And I went, nope. But we got home. But the cool part was that while we're at this Amish family, we got to learn about the Amish lifestyle and some of the ways they get around some modern technology stuff like electricity. We heard this noise at one time, and I said, yeah, we had these potatoes. I said, but I could hear this funny noise. He goes, well, do you want to know how they would mash the potatoes? This is the guy back in the bed and breakfast afterwards when we got back. He asked him how it was, and we said, like, yeah, we got there and they were vacuuming. I can't remember how he told us how the vacuum cleaner works. Everything was gaslit, gaslighting, kerosene lights, and all that sort of stuff. They had a refrigerator and freezer downstairs in the basement that ran off LPG gas. And I said, but, you know, it sounded like they were mixing the potatoes when they mashed them. He goes, oh, do you want to know what they were doing? And I said, absolutely. He said they had a cordless drill that they put a beater into and used that to beat up the potatoes. But I will tell you, the food was absolutely amazing. We had an incredible evening. But what fascinated me is up on the wall in their living room area, there were 4 different frames, and they were all cross-stitch of family trees. It had father and mother, down to 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 the husband. Then they had another one that had father and mother, all the way down to the daughter. Then they had another one over there that was, actually, no, it was only 3, sorry. And then they had another one, which was their family, that had them together as a couple. And then underneath it had each of their children's names embroidered and the year of birth next to each one. It was the coolest thing to see. And she had spaces underneath in case they had any more children. And I thought, that is such a cool way to recognize a family tree, is to, sorry, my watch is bothering me, is to cross-stitch and embroider it. And that's what they had done on these. And they just had them in plain frames up on the wall there. But it was just fascinating to read. And they said, yeah, when they, one of the wedding presents that they get from each family is this ancestry for each person. You know, the daughter gets one from her family, the husband gets one from his family, and they bring them into their homes. And then the wife is the one that has to do the one for their family things. And then when their children go to get married, she will then copy the other cross stitches and add her and her husband's name there and put their daughter or son's name at the bottom. And so I thought, that's just such a great way. And they go back they went back 5 generations on each one. Oh, that is so cool. That is really, really awesome. So that was one thing that I'd seen. Other ones that we have seen is, and you can do, like, some people will use watercolor paints to paint out the family tree to make it just a little more colorful. Like, they'll have the regular tree listed there, but then they might do a background of an actual tree, just as a background picture on watercolor with the actual tree laid out how you normally see a family tree laid out across the top of it or something like that. So they will use art to decorate the background, and then they put the family tree over top of that. So that's another way that it could be done. There's different companies out there that will do that for you. You could even get somebody who is a specialist in calligraphy to write the tree out for you. Have it as, go back X number of generations and have them write out each person, and it's all done in beautiful calligraphy, and you get to choose the font and that sort of stuff, and they can do it on parchment paper or some other sort of paper that they can, they will if you find a calligrapher, they will talk to you about this, about what sort of paper they can use, how big they can make it, how, and that sort of stuff. So that just gives you another visual way. It's something just really cool. And of course, if you got on parchment paper, it looks old. And people are like, oh, what's that old thing? And yeah, and you can frame it and that sort of stuff as well. Another way of the craft is memory quilts. You can create a quilt using fabrics from family heirlooms or with printed photographs. So they can take the photographs and they can print them onto fabric. Don't ask me how the actual transfer thing works. I don't know. And then they can make up these. And then if you're doing the quilting or you're working with a quilter, you can make up these quilts. But and there's things that I've known some people have done, and there's all sorts of different things. Like one of my friends who lives in an RV, she has these T-shirts that she has collected from different places that she's traveled, and so she gave them to a quilter to make a quilt out of her T-shirts. So she'll always have that memory with her of, she can snuggle under the quilts, and there's all the places that she's been. If you have somebody who passes, taking some of their favorite clothes, T-shirts, that sort of stuff, and having a quilt made out of them. You can also have embroidered onto the quilt things like milestones, locations, dates, and you put them into the little quilt blocks that they have as well. There's a variety of different things that you can do to create quilts as memory quilts. I've seen people do birthing quilts, which has like it might have a rabbit or some sort of baby animal on there, and then embroidered across that is the name, the given name at birth of the child, and underneath it is written their birth date, and they may even put who their parents are on there. They may do like a little mini family tree, or they just may leave it with their name on it and doing it that way as well. So there's the quilts have such a wide there's such a wide variety of things that you can do with the quilts, to use fabrics, to use family tree information on there. One of the ones that got one of the projects that was done in New Zealand a few years ago was they did this, the women's suffragettes, and the assignment was to make a quilt about an ancestor that was involved in the suffragette movement. And if you didn't know what the suffragette movement was, it's a big worldwide movement, but in New Zealand, they had all of these women who signed a petition to be able to vote. And in 1893, New Zealand granted women the right to vote. So there you go. You never know what's going to come out of it. But as part of this, I don't exactly know, it was just a few years ago. But what they did is that, and so I had, there was a second cousin of mine, there was an aunt of mine from different sides of the family. So my second cousin's on my dad's side of the family, and my aunt is on my mum's side of the family, and they each made a quilt. On my dad's side of the family, it was both of them were my second great grandmothers, and they had a little story that went with the quilt. They had a little, plaque thing that went with the quilt, talking about this person and who they were and what their role was in the suffragette movement and things like that. And then they brought all these quilts into the, I think they had them on display at Te Papa, which is our national museum. And there may have been some other, there was a moving display that traveled around New Zealand, but there were these beautiful quilts these women had sewn, and each one had a story about their, an ancestor that was involved in the suffragette movement. And I didn't get to see it in person, but I did get to see them online. And those quilts were fantastic. They were incredible works of art. And each one had a story to go with it. And they had the picture there of the quilt, and then they had the story next to it. So you could read through all of these different women about who they were and what their life was like. And, my second great grandmother on my dad's side, she was the second wife of my second great grandfather. His first wife had passed away, and so they got married, and then they ended up having my great grandfather, and then my second great grandfather passed away, and so my second great grandmother with my great grandfather and her stepdaughter, so my great grandfather's half sister, got on a boat, got on a ship. They came down to, I think they went to Australia first and then over to New Zealand. And she was there as a single mum. And they immigrated from England. Imagine that, England down to New Zealand. I think she might have had a brother here. I'm going to look more into that story, but I don't really quite remember. Meanwhile, my second great grandmother on my mum's side of the family, she had a husband. They married. They had some kids. He was a miner and worked in the mines, and he was killed in a mining accident. And so she had 5 or 6 children from her first marriage. 5 children from her first marriage. There were a couple of her children that died before they turned 10, and there's a tombstone that's got my second great grandfather's information on there, and his 2 young children that passed away before the age of 10 are also on that tombstone as well. and she had 3 or 4 surviving children. Then she got married again and had, I think it was 5 more children. And one of them, if you've been watching the series, watching what we do, and I talk about my great grand uncle who was a tyrant. She was the mum of him, and so she had these 2 families and living in these little mining towns and things, and just some of the challenges that she had to overcome as part of her story and who she is. And all my ancestors, all the women, I just think are absolutely incredible. That I've been blessed to have the ancestors that I found and the little pieces of information I found about them as far as their story goes. I mean, facts and figures, that's besides the point. I want to know who these people were. And just hearing about some of the challenges they've overcome, some of the things that they have had to face. They're just incredible, incredible women. And I'm so proud to be a descendant of theirs because they're such amazing women, and some of the, like the challenges and things they've had to overcome. And let's see, I can think of 3 of them right now who all left as single parents, whose husbands died young, left them with children, and then they had to battle their way through being, overcome the thing of being a single mom in those times, having to find income coming in because the men created the income and they had no source of income coming in. So it was interesting to learn. It's interesting to learn about them. So at least three of my second great grandmothers out of 8, 16. Sorry, out of 16. No, 8 second great. I've got 8 second great grandmothers and 8 second great grandfathers. That gives you a total of 16. Off the top of my head, I can think of 3 of them whose husbands died early on when their children were young. And they were left with very young children and had to survive. And they did. I think they're very courageous women, and I have that's why I love learning about them and some of the things they've overcome. The other way you can, totally getting off track here. Another way is photo collages and storyboards. You can arrange ancestral photos alongside captions or short stories. Remember, whenever we're talking about photographs, if you are with an archival safe pencil or an archival safe pen, very lightly enough to be read, but not hard enough to leave an imprint on the back of the photo. Or if you've got them in, put at least who, when, and where on that photograph, so we know who's in the photograph, when it was taken, and where it was taken. It makes it so much easier for those coming along behind you to know just the basics. But you can also turn around and pick out a photograph and go, oh, there's a story behind this photograph. I've got this big family photograph, and it was my great grandparents' 50th wedding anniversary. No, that wasn't that one. Their daughter had come over from America and had brought her family with her, and so there was a big family get together for Christmas one year, and it's a really cool picture. I can pick out my dad and my aunt and my uncle and my 2 uncles. I can pick them out. But yeah, it was just, and my grandparents, of course, and my grandmother's twin sister. But it was a really cool photograph. And so, there's that story that goes with it. And what is interesting is that is talking with some of the people who were in that photograph that are still around and hearing their versions of that event and things that they remember from that event, which is really cool. And you can then just take those memories and just put them next to that photograph and have a key there as to who's in those photographs. But, themes could include things like immigration stories, military service, family traditions, family reunions, anniversaries, milestone birthdays, anything like that you can do these genealogy scrapbooks. And you could use, fill it with photos and journal entries and all sorts of really cool stuff. And then there's DNA art. Now, I'm not so sure about this one, but I found it and I thought, okay, we're going to mention it anyway because somebody's bound to figure out how to do this. And that is to turn DNA results into art. Use ancestry data to create maps or pie charts with vibrant colors. I saw the vibrant colors like, yes, and designs. And you can frame and display these pieces as conversation starters. Oh, that's very interesting. What's that? Oh, that's my DNA. That's me. If you can look at this piece, this is my English my English heritage and my Cornish heritage, and this is my Scottish heritage, and this is my Irish one, and this is my Welsh one, and here's my Scandinavian one with Sweden and Norway, and oh no, what have I got in there now? Sweden and Denmark are showing up on mine, and there's a little bit from, what's the last one? It's either Spain or France. Yeah, so you can take those results and put them into pie charts or graphs and or maps, and just make them very colorful and display it as a conversation piece. You can do heirloom restoration projects. So restoring and repurposing family heirlooms like jewelry, furniture, tools, that sort of thing. I remember when my great uncle died, my great aunt, who was my grandfather's twin sister, invited my dad to come over one time, had my dad come over one time to go through the garage that had all of the tools that my great uncle used when he was building and racing jet boats. And her son had passed at that time. No, her son passed later on. And so Dad came in and she says, "Look, sort through it. Tell me what I can sell, what I can get for it." So basically, she wanted somebody to go through this stuff. And Dad came home, and then she says, "Oh, make sure." And she goes, "And Robert?" Yes, all that generation, and my aunt seemed to call my dad Robert. Everybody else calls him Bob. But she told him to take what he wanted, and so sorry, she made a weird noise. So he was able to go through these tools and help her. Basically, I think just like clear out the tools and that sort of stuff. I'm not exactly sure the full story, and I probably got some of the details wrong, but I do know that he came home with some pieces from the tools that my great uncle had used. And again, write the story that goes with those heirlooms. I have sitting up in my kitchen cabinet a barometer that was either my great-grandfather's or my second great-grandfather's, and I can't remember which one. And I also have not a tapestry, I guess it is a tapestry. I've got a tapestry that my great-grandfather did, and it's of a knight on a horse with his lance and his shield, and he's in his full armor. And it used to sit above the dining table in my grandmother's house. And I have that. It's unframed, but one of the things I'm going to do when I get back to New Zealand is get it all framed so I can put it back, so I can put it up and display it again, which I can't wait to do. You can create family history books, compile family stories, interviews, documents into beautiful designed books. And you can think about adding things like illustrations, family recipes, poems, any other thing that you come across that could be good in there. You may have a writer in the family who wrote some poems, so why not include them? Or somebody who composed music, so why not include part of that score that they composed? There's all sorts of different things that family members and the ancestors may have written down. So why not include some of that stuff? And if you've got that as heirlooms and things, why not include some of that stuff into a family history book? You can do genealogy inspired jewelry. You can have custom pieces made with initials, birthstones, or small replicas of ancestral locations. You can make them as pendants, charms. You can even have even taking the time to do like Christmas ornaments. That's a good one. Christmas ornaments, having the face of an ancestor on a Christmas ornament, and on the back writing who that person was, their birth date and place, and their death date and place, and who they married. There's a really cool idea. And this way you can have a real family tree at Christmas time. You put the tree up there and you hang all these ornaments on the tree that can go back generations. Now that's a cool idea. You can also involve the whole family in creating a large canvas or mural of your shared history. And you can encourage your kids to contribute with drawings or stories about what family means to them as well. And then, that just gets passed down through generations. So my question to you is, where did my question go? Oh yeah. What creative ways have you found to bring your family history to life? So those are some creative ways that you can bring your family tree to life and make it more interesting for those who aren't quite really interested in the family history. But sometimes it could be because the fact they don't want to read it, they want to see it. They are visual learners. They may even be kinesthetic, where they're textile. So doing an art piece will encourage those senses of visual or text, touch for them, and get them interested into the family tree and the genealogy, because now you've got something that they can relate to, rather than giving them a piece of paper with all this information written on it. They're like, I can't comprehend that. But put it as a visual, now they get it. So it's another way to get people, to get the family members involved in creating the family tree, learning about their family history in a completely different way, rather than sitting down and writing a book about it, or going, oh, look, here's the family tree written out, and showing them a group family sheet. And they're just like, okay, it's just a whole bunch of names and numbers, and I've got no idea what it says. But if they see something visual, there's something they can touch like a quilt, that would resonate with them a lot better. So with that, we are out of here. Go out, have a super fantastic, sparkling evening, and we will catch you guys back here tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. Pacific.